The first thing Eli Brooke saw that scorching summer morning was bare feet pressed into the dust, pushed against his barn like somebody had nailed them there. He stopped walking. His hand drifted toward his belt without him even telling it to. And the thought that came with that movement, it wasn't mercy. The girl didn't scream. She just stared at him, clutching a fistful of dry palmetto leaves to her chest, like those brittle leaves were the only law she had left in the world. Her cheek was swollen. Her knee was bruised to the color of a thundercloud. And her eyes, Lord, those eyes, they looked older than 21 should ever have to look. Eli crouched down. Slow. Close enough that a passerby might have thought the worst. The girl's lips trembled, then steadied. Like she had rehearsed what came next 100 times in the dark. She whispered 4 words that made Eli's throat go completely dry. My father comes at night. Her voice cracked on the last word. But it held. Like a fence post driven too deep to fall. Eli didn't ask which father. He didn't ask anything. He just stared at the barn door, at the darkness pooling inside it, as if that darkness might answer for her. Then he reached for his coat, set it gently on the ground, slid it toward her with 2 fingers, nothing more, and forced his voice to come out steady. You don't have to take it, he said. But it's there if you want it. It was summer outside Trinidad, Colorado. The kind of heat that baked the prairie flat and turned a patient man's nerves to wire. Eli was 55 years old, a rancher with wind-cracked hands and a face that had learned a long time ago to hide heartbreak behind squint lines. He had come to this old barn to mend a broken hinge. To be alone for a spell. Because loneliness, at least, was quieter than town talk. Now there was a young woman pressed against his boards, shaking like a spooked colt, and Eli could feel the whole day tilting toward something he wasn't ready for. A man's word was about to matter more than his comfort. And he knew it. She wouldn't take the coat until he leaned back and turned his body sideways, giving her as much space as the world allowed. He reached for his canteen. Slow. Careful. Poured a little water into the cap and set it between them without a word. Then he nodded once and kept his voice low, because loud voices were for cattle, not for someone who had been cornered. All right, he said. You're safe right here. I won't touch you unless you ask me to. She swallowed. Her gaze slid past him to the open land, to the long road stretching out toward Raton Pass. You could see it in her eyes. She was calculating. Measuring the distance between her and something better. If her father was the kind of man that folks respected, the first thing Trinidad would put on trial was her truth. Not his hands. Her truth. Tell me your name, Eli said quietly. And tell me who you can't go back to. He didn't push for more than that. He just rose, slow as a man with nothing to hide, and kept his body turned so she could breathe. She said her name was Rosa Hart. And the way she said Hart, it sounded like a bruise. When he asked who she couldn't go back to, she swallowed hard and nodded toward town. She didn't say the man's name yet. She just said he was the kind of man folks tipped their hats to. Eli had seen that kind before. Clean cuffs in daylight. Dirty hands after dark. He told her to stay low. He led his horse the long way, keeping the barn between her and the open road. But what Eli didn't know yet, what he couldn't have known, was that the man she feared had already posted a notice in town. And that notice had Eli's name on it too. Eli got Rosa to the edge of Trinidad by late afternoon, the heat still clinging to them like a wet shirt. He didn't take her to the sheriff's door. The first thing a town does when the story doesn't suit it is protect its own version. He knew that better than he knew most things. Instead, he took her around behind May Pierce's boarding house, where the kitchen door squeaked and the gossip stayed outside. May looked at Rosa once. She didn't ask a single foolish question. She just opened the door wider and said, "Come on in, honey." Like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment her whole life. Eli stepped out front to buy salve and soft bread and kept his eyes down like a man hiding an ordinary errand. That was when he saw the notice board and felt his stomach drop like a stone into still water. It wasn't a wanted poster. Not yet. It was a missing notice. Rosa's name printed bold. A reward printed bolder. And underneath that clean print, someone had added words in fresh ink. Runaway daughter. Likely confused. Reward for safe return to loving father. Eli's jaw tightened. He had seen towns do this before. Turn a frightened young woman into a problem so that decent men would stop asking questions. Across the street, Victor Hart stood in the shade. Dressed neat as Sunday. Talking soft and gentle to Deputy Warren Cade. Victor looked straight at Eli and smiled. He smiled like he already knew exactly where the girl was hiding. Victor held his hands like a grieving father. His voice was gentle from a distance. But his eyes were hunting, cool and patient, the way a man's eyes get when he is used to winning. And Warren was smiling beside him like a man already counting the reward money in his head. Eli turned away. He didn't run. Running would only sell their life for them. He walked, straight, even, toward the saloon, and he knew before he pushed through the door what was waiting on the other side. Men looked up from their cards. A few faces turned away too fast, the way men do when they already know the script. Deputy Warren Cade stood near the bar. He smiled at Eli like a man holding all the cards in a rigged game. Eli moved to Tom Heller's table and spoke low enough to keep it private. He said there was a young woman hiding. He said she was scared. He said the man she feared wore respect like a Sunday shirt. Tom said a town runs on proof. And proof takes patience. Eli didn't like it. But he understood it. The law had to walk before it could run. Across the room, Warren leaned close to a loud ranch hand. Eli watched money change hands. That man stood up slow, turned toward Eli like a rooster picking a fight, and called him a kidnapper. He painted Victor Hart as a decent grieving father to the whole room. A few men laughed. A few more shifted their stools closer. Eli felt the trap close around him, and he hated how easy it was. He tried to step back, but another man cut off the space behind him. The ranch hand shoved him. Beer splashed across Eli's shirt. Eli swung once. He made it count. No knives. No guns. Just two men and a truth the room didn't want to hear. Tom stood up at last, his voice cutting through the noise like cold water through dry dust. He called everyone back. For a moment, they listened. Because Marshall still meant something. Warren stepped in fast. Put iron on Eli with a grin and called it disturbing the peace, said it loud for the whole room to hear. Eli didn't fight the cuffs. Fighting would only make Warren's lie sound like the truth. Tom met Eli's eyes. Just once. And Eli saw something there that wasn't judgment. It was a question. Eli got marched outside and the whole street watched like it was a Sunday show. Outside the jail, he heard Warren lean close to Victor and promise him something for tonight. And Eli knew right then, Rosa was running out of hours. But what he didn't know was that May Pierce had been listening all along. And she had found something tucked inside a tin of dried flowers that was about to change everything. Eli sat on the jail bunk and listened to the night settle into its bones. He kept his face calm for the deputy on watch. But inside his chest, time was turning mean. Every minute that passed was a minute Rosa didn't have. He pressed his palms flat against his knees and breathed slow, the way a man breathes when he cannot afford to fall apart. Marshal Tom Heller came back after midnight. Not loud. Not warm. Just steady, the way a man walks when he has worn a badge long enough to know when something is genuinely wrong. Eli told him what he had heard. Warren promising Victor something for tonight. Tom's eyes narrowed down to slits. He asked one question that mattered. Did Eli have a real reason to believe Victor wanted Rosa silenced before morning? Eli said yes. He said it like a man staking his entire name on it. Tom walked out. He didn't come back for what felt like hours. Eli paced the cell, counting every creak of the building like it was a warning. His boots wore a track in the floor. His mind wore a track through every bad outcome. When Tom finally returned, he had papers in his hand and the kind of tired look a man gets when the truth turns out to be even uglier than he expected. He had dug it up from the county records office. A land deed tied to the Hart name down near the Purgatory River. And there, sitting neat as Sunday, Warren Cade's signature as witness. Neat as Sunday. Dirty as sin. Eli didn't smile. The proof wasn't enough yet. It was a trail, and trails only matter if you follow them all the way to the end. Tom arranged Eli's release the clean way, a bond, a quiet warning, no fanfare. His eyes showed the weight of years wearing that badge, years of watching decent men get swallowed by louder ones. Eli agreed without argument. The only punch that mattered now was the kind that landed in a courtroom. They went to May's boarding house through the back way, where the kitchen light leaked through a crack in the door like the last coal of a dying fire. May let them in, jaw set, eyes sharp, like a woman who had learned long ago exactly what a decent person does when a powerful man believes no one will stop him. Rosa stayed behind the wall by the pantry. She didn't step out until Eli said her name softly, the way you say a word you don't want to break. Tom kept his distance, hat in his hands, head slightly bowed, showing her without saying it that he wasn't there to take her story away from her. May brought out what she had found. A receipt for money, signed by Warren. A second paper pointing straight at the Heartland. It wasn't beautiful proof. But it was real. And real was all Tom needed to start a fire. They set the trap without calling it a trap. Eli stood near the stable yard where his horse could see him, where anyone watching from a distance might believe he was alone. The summer night pressed down heavy. The boards groaned with every warm gust. Somewhere in the dark, a horse shifted and breathed. Then footsteps came. Careful. Deliberate. The kind of footsteps that believed they had every right to be exactly where they were. A shadow slipped into the yard. Then another, right behind it. Eli's heart hit once, hard, against his ribs. If they spotted him too soon, it was over. And Rosa would pay the price of his mistake with what little she had left. He recognized Victor Hart by the way the man carried himself, even in the dark. Proud, even while sneaking. The kind of pride that never learned shame. And right behind Victor came Deputy Warren Cade, quiet as a snake, close enough to prove this was never, not for one single moment, a family matter. Eli held still. He let them walk into the light. Because sometimes the only way to beat a liar is to let him talk first. Victor raised his hand toward the latch. Steady. Calm. Like he owned the night and everything in it. And Eli finally understood, in that one sick moment, what Rosa had meant by the word owned. Before Victor could touch that latch, Marshal Tom stepped out of the shadow. And his voice turned the night cold. Warren reached for his authority. But authority looks very small when it is standing right beside a lie. May stepped into the light and held up the papers. The receipt with Warren's signature did the talking that no one in that yard could undo. Rosa did not rush forward. She stayed behind the wall. She let the truth walk out first. Victor tried to sound like a father. His words tripped over the facts in his eyes. His eyes never once looked at that girl with love. Tom put iron on both men. And for the first time in years, Rosa heard footsteps that were leaving. Morning came hot and bright, and Trinidad gathered to watch the way towns always do when the story changes and nobody wants to admit they got it wrong. Victor tried one last trick. He called Eli a thief. He called Rosa a troublemaker. Tom did not argue with noise. He answered with records and a witness from the freight office who had seen Warren sign for that money with his own hand. Warren broke for the crowd and Eli moved, caught him, brought him down, without cruelty. Because this story was never about revenge. It was about ending a long, dark night so that a young woman could finally sleep without fear. Victor was taken away. And his town made room, slowly, reluctantly, the way towns do, for the truth it had refused to hold. Rosa did not get her years back. Nobody could give her that. But she got something rarer, something that cannot be purchased or borrowed or stolen. She got a tomorrow that belonged entirely to her. Eli didn't ask for praise. He made sure her land papers stayed in her hands and her name stayed clean. He walked back to his ranch, cracked hands and all, and he didn't look back once. That is the part people forget about justice. It is not one loud, bright moment. It is a long chain of small choices made by ordinary people who refuse to let it break. A good man does not need applause. He needs the spine to do what is right when it costs him everything. If this story moved you, if you believe a person's word still matters and that one quiet act of courage can change the shape of a life, please hit the like button right now and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. And leave a comment below. Would you have believed the town's reputation or the fear in Rosa's eyes? If you were Eli Brooke, would you have stood alone when the whole street wanted you to step aside? I read every single comment. Tell me what you would have done.